Hello students, in this video we're going to learn about the Greek and Roman civilization. These are the two most important civilizations that contributed in the areas of literature, art and architecture, science and even democracy. So students, let's get started. So students, we will start from ancient Greece civilization. Ancient Greece is situated in southwestern Europe and it constituted of many small city-states. So students, Greece was not under a unified rule, but it had around 1500 territories that were ruled by different rulers. Okay, and the capital city is Athens, which is, if you look at this picture, is represented by this small star here, and it lies around the Aegean Sea. So students, Greece was previously known as Yunnan, and the people living in Greece were known as Yunani. The Greeks ruled much of the Mediterranean region and beyond. So they extended the borders from east towards India and west towards Spain. Now, students, the Greeks were very proud of their strength, and their soldiers were even considered as heroes. And these heroes of different city-states competed with each other, but for celebrating the strength and power and building relationship between small city-states, they conducted Olympic Games every 4 years. So Olympics originated from Greece and it started in the year 776 BC, sorry. And the people held this Olympics as a form of sacrifice to the Greek gods. And the Olympic Games of today are the modified version of these sports, like the long jump, javelin throw, running events, boxing, wrestling, and others. So students, I guess you even have sports day in your school, which consists of these games, right? So students, let's look at the influence of Greeks in different areas. The Greek art and architecture was very famous, particularly, and uh, and in many of their architectures, you can find these three columns. These three columns are named Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, and these columns can be divided into three parts. So students, if you look at this picture, the first column has a top, which is known as the capital. The tall part of the column is known as shaft, and it has 20 sides, and Doric does not have a base. The other two columns have a base, and Doric is the simplest one of the three columns, and the Doric column is incorporated in the Parthenon temple. So this picture you see here, students, is the Parthenon temple, which has the Doric columns. You see here? So Parthenon temple was initially a central bank, and talking about the columns again, the fanciest of these three columns and the most complex is the Corinthian, which was loved by the Romans, and we'll learn about them later. So students, these columns can be found in many modern architectures too. So students, the Greeks were also famous for their statues, which were standing figures and reliefs. This first statue is of an Olympic game, which involves the throwing of the disc, and the second statue that you see here, students, is of a Greek god. Now, students, the Greeks worshipped Greek gods, particularly Zeus. Zeus is the god of gods in Greece, and and the belief of Greek gods also shaped the belief of Romans. Now, students, the Greeks had a tremendous impact on literature. The very famous epic poet Homer was the one who wrote Iliad and Odyssey. Students, have you heard of the story or read the story in your English class, the story named Helen of Troy? The Helen of Troy is what happens in the story of Iliad, and Odyssey is the sequel. So the Homer's Iliad and Odyssey is pretty much of the same importance as Ramayana and Mahabharata in the Eastern culture. The students' other influences made by Greeks were their language. Many English language have come from the Greeks. Words like politics, democracy, etc. And many modern languages have Greek roots. So students, if you look at this picture here, you can find similarities in the alphabets, English alphabets, like alpha, beta, gamma, A, B, C, D. So students, democracy was first practiced in Greece to introduce people and represent people's representation in politics. So to give people the power in politics, democracy was introduced in Greece, and the first constitution was also held in Greece. So every person had the right to vote and elect their representative. Students, another field that contributed was philosophy. The first philosopher, Greek philosopher, was Socrates, who took poison for truth and justice. His pupil was Plato, who wrote an influential book on political science known as Republic. And Plato had his own pupils, Aristotle and Alexander the Great. And again, Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great, who was the last ruler of Greece. And it was after the death of Alexander the Great that caused the fall of Greek civilization, and then began the rise of Roman civilization. So students, let's look at the Roman civilization now. Roman civilization developed around 2,800 years ago in the 9th century BC. Rome is the capital of Italy, and how the name Rome was brought is a very interesting story, and let me share that with you. So students, according to legend, Rome was founded by two demigod brothers named Romulus and Remus. They were twin brothers, and in an argument over who would rule Italy, Romulus killed his own brother and named the city after himself, therefore Rome. So students, all of the people of a state, be it rich or poor, were given the position of citizens. So students, for a long period of time, Rome was a republic country, meaning there was no central power was given to a single person. Okay, but after the arrival of a very powerful general named Julius Caesar, he turned the Roman Republic into Roman Empire. And how he did that is by extending and conquering many territories of Rome. And he was considered as the most powerful ruler of this civilization. So students, the art and architecture of Rome was also of equal importance and led to the basis for modern architecture, sorry. So students, I mentioned earlier that the Romans particularly loved the Corinthian column. So students, this fourth picture shows the Corinthian column, and it combines the top of the Ionic column with the acanthus leaves. Okay, and this column is incorporated in many of its architectures, like the Balbic. The Balbic is this picture right here. So students, the Romans brought a lot of new ideas to architecture, including the arc that you can see in the tall buildings that curve is the arc, and the baked brick and the use of cement and concrete was also introduced by the Romans. The very famous structure of Rome is the Colosseum, the first picture that you see here. This is the Colosseum, this is Baalbek, and yeah, that's it. Students, I hope now you understand how the Greeks and Romans influenced and contributed in many aspects such as art, philosophy, literature, and architecture. Now, students, these arts and architecture of these civilizations still remain today. Do you know how, students? Because it's because they respect and preserve their culture that these architectures still stand today. Even our country has many beautiful architectures and national heritages which we have the responsibility to preserve and protect.